Two nations separated by an entire ocean, yet surprisingly similar in ways that will shock you. Australia and Canada both boast massive landmasses with tiny populations scattered across them. Canada stretches across nearly 10 million square kilometers, while Australia covers 7.7 million, yet their combined populations barely reach 67 million people. But here's where it gets interesting. Australia's life expectancy hits 83.05 years, ranking 8th globally, while Canada sits at 81.65 years in 16th place. When we examine the 2025 data, the similarities end and some fascinating differences emerge. One of these countries just experienced a demographic shift that changes everything. By the end of this comparison, you'll have a clear answer to which country deserves the crown in 2025. Let's start with something that will completely mess with your perspective on just how empty these giant nations really are. Population battle. The numbers game. More people live in Greater Tokyo than in all of Canada. Think about that. A single metropolitan area houses more residents than the second largest country on Earth. This puts the population battle between these two giants into sharp perspective. Canada reached 40.13 million people in 2025, growing by 2.1 million since 2022. That represents a population increase driven primarily by immigration, with the country welcoming record numbers of new permanent residents. Australia hit 26.96 million people in 2025, up from 25.5 million in recent years. The growth rate reached 2.3% annually, meaning Australia adds roughly 600,000 new residents every year through a combination of immigration and natural increase. The urban concentration patterns reveal shocking disparities. Toronto and Vancouver alone house 35% of Canada's total population, with Toronto's greater metropolitan area reaching 6.8 million people and Vancouver hitting 2.9 million residents. These numbers make Toronto larger than entire provinces like Saskatchewan and Manitoba combined. Sydney and Melbourne hold 43% of Australia's entire population, with Sydney's metropolitan area reaching 5.8 million people, while Melbourne hit 5.6 million. Perth grew to 2.4 million residents, making it larger than 15 entire US states. The population density numbers remain mind-blowing when you consider the sheer size of these countries. Canada sits at 4.4 people per square kilometer, making it the 7th most sparsely populated country globally. Australia maintains 3.5 people per square kilometer, ranking as the 5th most sparsely populated nation. To put this in perspective, Bangladesh crams 1,330 people into every square kilometer, while these two giants can barely manage single digits. Canada just crossed a demographic milestone that changes everything about its future trajectory. For the first time in the country's history, immigrants and their children now represent more than 50% of the population in major urban centers like Toronto and Vancouver. This shift happened faster than government projections anticipated, reaching the threshold 3 years ahead of schedule. The implications ripple through everything from political representation to cultural identity to economic policy. These population changes strain infrastructure systems beyond their designed capacity. Toronto's public transit system operates at 140% capacity during peak hours, while Vancouver's housing shortage reached crisis levels with average home prices hitting 15 times median household income. Sydney faces similar housing pressures, with rental vacancy rates dropping below 1% for the first time. Melbourne's population growth outpaced infrastructure development, creating traffic congestion that costs the economy an estimated $8 billion annually. Healthcare systems buckle under the demographic pressure. Canada added 400,000 new patients to its healthcare rolls without proportional increases in medical staff or facilities. Family doctor shortages reached 6.5 million Canadians who lack access to primary care. Australia faces similar challenges, with emergency room wait times in major cities reaching record highs. Both countries struggle to train enough healthcare workers to serve their rapidly growing populations. The geographic distribution of these populations reveals shocking concentration patterns. In Canada, 90% of the population lives within 160 kilometers of the US border, leaving vast northern territories virtually empty. The 3 northern territories combined house fewer people than a mid-sized Canadian city. Ontario and Quebec contain 62% of Canada's total population, despite representing just 16% of the country's land area. Australia's population concentration is even more extreme. The eastern seaboard from Brisbane to Melbourne houses 78% of all Australians, while the interior remains largely uninhabited. Western Australia covers 1/3 of the continent, but contains just 11% of the national population. The Northern Territory, larger than most countries, houses fewer than 250,000 people. Urban versus rural population splits tell the real story. Canada reached 82% urban population in 2025, with rural areas losing residents at accelerating rates. Small towns across the prairies and maritime provinces recorded population declines exceeding 10% over 5 years. Australia hit 87% urbanization, among the highest rates globally. Regional centres like Cairns and Darwin grew modestly, but remote communities continued shrinking as young people migrated to major cities for education and employment opportunities. Canada wins the population growth race decisively, adding residents at nearly double Australia's rate when adjusted for existing population size. The 2025 figures show Canada growing at 2.4% annually compared to Australia's 2.3%. But Canada's larger base population means the absolute numbers favour the northern nation significantly. This matters because population growth drives economic expansion, consumer demand, and tax revenue generation. But population size tells only part of the story. The real question becomes whether quantity translates to quality when it comes to the lives these growing populations actually live. The longevity showdown. Which country gives you the better shot at celebrating your 100th birthday? The 2025 data reveals some fascinating developments in the longevity race between these two nations. Australia maintains its edge in life expectancy at 83.05 years based on 2023 data, placing it 8th globally among all countries. Canada follows at 81.65 years, ranking 16th worldwide. That gap of 1.4 years might seem small, but it represents thousands of additional days with family, friends, and pursuing the things you love. The gender breakdown tells an interesting story about health patterns in both countries. Canadian men live 4.29 years less than Canadian women, compared to Australia's 3.54-year gap. Canadian men face greater longevity challenges than their Australian counterparts, while women in both countries perform similarly in terms of life expectancy. Lifestyle factors play a massive role in these longevity differences. Australia's outdoor culture and year-round warm climate encourage physical activity levels that many northern countries struggle to match. The work-life balance culture emphasizes leisure time and stress reduction, contributing significantly to overall health outcomes. Weekend barbecues, beach trips, and outdoor social gatherings form integral parts of Australian social life, promoting both physical activity and mental well-being. Canada faces unique challenges from its harsh winter climate, which confines many residents indoors for months at a time. However, Canadians develop remarkable resilience and adapt through winter sports, community centres, and indoor fitness cultures that flourish during cold seasons. Ice hockey, skiing, snowboarding, and winter hiking maintain activity levels despite challenging weather conditions. Healthcare system differences create measurable impacts on longevity outcomes. Australia's Medicare system covers medical clinic visits and dentistry through its universal healthcare framework, ensuring consistent access to preventive care. The system emphasizes early intervention and regular health screenings, catching potential problems before they become life-threatening. Bulk billing practices mean many Australians receive medical care without out-of-pocket expenses, removing financial barriers to seeking treatment. Canada's universal healthcare system provides comprehensive coverage for permanent residents, but wait times for non-emergency procedures can stretch longer than in Australia. Specialist appointments in major Canadian cities average 6 to 8 weeks, compared to 3 to 4 weeks in Australian metropolitan areas. However, Canada excels in rural healthcare delivery, maintaining medical services in remote communities that Australia struggles to serve effectively. Flying doctor services and telemedicine programs reach isolated populations across Canada's vast northern territories. Environmental factors create surprising health advantages and disadvantages in each country. Australia's clean air quality in major cities contributes to respiratory health, but intense UV radiation creates the world's highest skin cancer rates. The country records 14,000 new melanoma cases annually, with Queensland showing particularly elevated rates due to its tropical latitude and outdoor lifestyle culture. Sun safety campaigns and regular skin screenings help mitigate these risks, but the fundamental environmental challenge remains. Canada's northern latitude provides natural protection from UV radiation, resulting in significantly lower skin cancer rates. However, air pollution in major urban centers like Toronto and Vancouver creates respiratory health challenges. Winter air quality problems arise from heating systems and reduced air circulation, while summer smog affects millions in the Quebec-Windsor corridor. The country's vast forests provide excellent air filtration, but wildfire seasons increasingly threaten air quality across western provinces. Both nations fund public health initiatives differently. Australia focuses on preventive screening programs and mental health services, while Canada emphasizes universal drug coverage and community healthcare centers. These different approaches reflect each country's specific health challenges and demographic needs. Population aging patterns reveal different demographic pressures affecting healthcare systems. Canada's average population age of 42.4 years creates greater strain on healthcare resources, with larger percentages requiring age-related medical interventions. The country faces physician shortages in geriatric medicine, struggling to train enough specialists for its aging population. Elder care facilities operate at capacity in most provinces, creating waiting lists for long-term care placement. Australia's younger average age of 38.8 years provides some demographic advantages, but rapid population growth strains healthcare infrastructure differently. Emergency room wait times increased 12% in 2024 as growing populations outpaced healthcare facility expansion. The country faces nursing shortages across all aged care sectors, requiring increased immigration of healthcare professionals to meet demand. Surprising health statistics contradict some expectations about these countries. Despite Australia's reputation for outdoor fitness culture, obesity rates reached 31% in 2025, higher than Canada's 29%. Fast food consumption and sedentary entertainment habits counteract the benefits of outdoor lifestyle opportunities. Urban sprawl in cities like Sydney and Melbourne creates car-dependent lifestyles that reduce daily physical activity levels. Canada shows unexpected strength in cardiovascular health outcomes despite its colder climate and winter lifestyle challenges. Heart disease mortality rates dropped 8% from 2020 to 2025, attributed to improved emergency response systems and better preventive care protocols. The country's emphasis on community healthcare centers provides consistent monitoring for high-risk patients, catching problems before they become critical. Mental health statistics reveal significant differences between the countries. Australia records higher rates of anxiety and depression, particularly among young adults aged 18 to 25. The competitive culture and housing affordability pressures in major cities contribute to psychological stress. However, the country leads in mental health treatment accessibility, with government-subsidized therapy sessions available to all residents. Canada demonstrates better work-life balance metrics, with shorter average work weeks and more vacation time usage. Stress-related illness rates remain lower than in Australia, despite challenging winter conditions. The country's social safety net provides better support for unemployed individuals, reducing financial stress that can impact physical health. Australia emerges as the clear winner in the longevity showdown, offering better prospects for a long, healthy life. The combination of favorable climate, comprehensive healthcare coverage, and outdoor lifestyle culture creates optimal conditions for extended lifespan. While Canada shows impressive improvements in cardiovascular health and work-life balance, Australia's 1.4-year life expectancy advantage reflects consistent health advantages that compound over decades. But longevity means little without the space to actually live that longer life to its fullest potential. Both countries possess something that most nations can only dream of: absolutely massive territories that dwarf entire continents. Land giants face off. Picture this. You could fit the entire United Kingdom into Canada nearly 41 times over, while Australia could swallow up the UK roughly 32 times. We're talking about land masses so enormous that they challenge your ability to comprehend their true scale. Canada stretches 9,984,670 square kilometers, claiming the title of second largest country on Earth behind only Russia. Australia covers 7,741,220 square kilometers, securing sixth place globally and leaving massive nations like India and Argentina in its dust. The exact measurements for 2025 confirm Canada's overwhelming size advantage of 2.24 million square kilometers. Canada's northern territories alone cover more land than the entire European Union, while Australia's vast interior surpasses the size of the entire continental United States east of the Mississippi River. Both countries dwarf most other nations, but Canada's sheer scale creates geographic possibilities that even Australia cannot match. Here's where things get fascinating. How much of these massive territories can actually support human civilization? Over 90% of Canadians live within 160 kilometers of the US border, leaving vast northern regions virtually uninhabited. The Canadian Shield, a geological formation covering nearly half the country, consists primarily of rocky terrain unsuitable for agriculture or major urban development. Permafrost affects 50% of Canadian territory, creating foundation problems for buildings and making infrastructure development extremely expensive. Australia confronts different but equally challenging geographical constraints. 78% of Australians live on the eastern seaboard, concentrated in a narrow coastal strip. The outback covers 70% of the continent with arid and semi-arid conditions that cannot support large populations. The Great Victoria Desert, Great Sandy Desert, and Gibson Desert combine to create hostile environments where water scarcity makes permanent settlement nearly impossible. Climate zone diversity reveals striking differences between these continental giants. Canada experiences 6 distinct climate zones: Arctic, subarctic, continental, oceanic, semi-arid, and highland. Australia's climate zones concentrate around 3 main types: Mediterranean in the south, tropical in the north, and temperate oceanic along the eastern seaboard. Canada's extreme temperature variations create dramatically different living conditions across regions, while Australia maintains more consistent warmth throughout the year despite seasonal variations. Recent environmental policy changes reveal different approaches to land management and conservation. Canada implemented the Nature-Based Climate Solutions Fund in 2024, allocating $4 billion toward forest restoration and wetland protection. The program aims to sequester carbon while creating sustainable forestry jobs across provinces. Indigenous land management practices gained formal recognition, with First Nations communities receiving increased authority over traditional territories covering millions of hectares. Australia launched the Threatened Species Action Plan in 2025, targeting habitat restoration for endangered species across 30 million hectares. The program focuses on rebuilding ecosystems damaged by bushfires and invasive species. New regulations restrict mining activities in sensitive environmental areas, while renewable energy projects receive priority approval on degraded agricultural land. Geographic barriers shape settlement patterns in profound ways. Canada's Rocky Mountains create a natural divide between eastern and western regions, while the St. Lawrence Seaway connects inland cities to international shipping. Hudson Bay remains frozen for much of the year, limiting shipping access to northern communities that depend on costly air transport for supplies. Australia's Great Dividing Range runs along the eastern coast, creating fertile valleys where most agricultural activity occurs. The Murray River system provides crucial irrigation for farming regions, while coastal plains offer the most suitable land for urban development. Natural resource distribution tells a story of geological abundance in both countries. Canada holds 13% of global freshwater reserves, creating potential for hydroelectric power generation and water export opportunities. The Canadian Shield contains vast mineral deposits including gold, copper, nickel, and rare earth elements. Oil sands in Alberta represent one of the world's largest petroleum reserves, while natural gas reserves in British Columbia and Alberta continue expanding. Australia possesses significant uranium reserves, making it a major player in nuclear fuel supply chains. Iron ore deposits in Western Australia supply steel production worldwide, while coal reserves support both domestic energy needs and export revenues. Natural gas reserves off the northwestern coast support liquefied natural gas exports to Asian markets. Agricultural potential differs dramatically between these land giants. Canada's prairie provinces contain some of the world's most fertile soil, producing wheat, canola, and barley for global markets. The country's short growing season limits crop diversity, but creates ideal conditions for hardy grains. Canada has the world's third largest forest area, while Australia ranks sixth globally in forest coverage. Australia's agricultural zones concentrate in temperate regions where rainfall supports crop production. The country excels in sheep and cattle ranching across semi-arid regions, while wine production flourishes in Mediterranean climate areas. Both countries contain millions of hectares that remain unexplored or undeveloped. Canada's northern territories hold vast mineral wealth that remains largely untapped due to harsh conditions and transportation costs. Remote areas require helicopter access and operate under extreme weather conditions that limit exploration to brief summer seasons. Australia's interior regions contain undiscovered mineral deposits, but water scarcity and extreme temperatures make extraction expensive and logistically challenging. Canada emerges as the clear winner in terms of geographic opportunities, offering superior freshwater resources, greater climate diversity, and more extensive natural resource deposits. The country's massive size provides room for population growth and economic expansion that Australia cannot match. While Australia benefits from more consistent climate conditions and coastal access, Canada's geographic advantages create greater long-term potential for national development. But raw geographic potential means nothing without the economic engine to transform those resources into prosperity and opportunity. Economic powerhouse battle. Here's something that will blow your mind about economic rankings. Canada sits as the 10th largest economy globally with a nominal GDP of $2.24 trillion, while Australia ranks 13th with $1.83 trillion. But here's the twist that changes everything about this comparison. When you break down those massive numbers by individual citizens, Australia completely flips the script. Every Australian citizen effectively represents $67,924 in GDP per capita, while each Canadian represents $54,473. The average Australian generates significantly more economic value than their Canadian counterpart. Different industries drive economic success in each country, creating unique strengths and vulnerabilities. Australia's economy depends heavily on mining exports, with the country supplying 30% of global iron ore demand through shipments primarily to China. This creates economic stability through consistent international demand. Tourism rebounds strongly, contributing $60 billion annually as international travel restrictions completely lifted. Wine exports reached record levels, while agricultural products like beef and wheat maintain strong global market positions. Canada's economic engines operate across more diversified sectors. The country's oil sands rank third globally in reserves, contributing $200 billion annually to GDP. Technology companies in Toronto and Vancouver generate increasing revenue streams, with artificial intelligence and software development attracting international investment. The financial services sector, centered in Toronto, manages over $8 trillion in assets under management. Forestry products supply global construction markets, while agricultural exports focus on grains and canola oil for international buyers. Job market conditions reveal stark differences between these economic powerhouses. Australia maintains an unemployment rate of just 3.8% in late 2024, representing near full employment conditions. Labor shortages affect multiple sectors, from construction to healthcare, driving wage increases across the economy. Job creation averaged 35,000 new positions monthly throughout 2024, with service sectors leading employment growth. Skills shortages prompt increased immigration targeting specific occupations. Canada faces greater employment challenges, with unemployment reaching 6.9% in early 2025. Regional variations create uneven job market conditions, with Alberta and Saskatchewan showing stronger employment than maritime provinces. Technology sector layoffs affected major cities like Toronto and Vancouver, while traditional manufacturing regions struggled with plant closures. Government job creation programs targeted infrastructure development and green energy transitions, but private sector hiring remained sluggish compared to Australia's robust employment growth. Recent economic policy developments transformed competitive landscapes in both countries. Australia implemented corporate tax reductions for small and medium enterprises, lowering rates from 30% to 25% for companies earning under $50 million annually. The policy stimulates business investment and expansion, particularly benefiting domestic service providers and manufacturers. Infrastructure spending increased 40%, focusing on transportation networks and renewable energy projects that create construction jobs while improving long-term economic productivity. Canada pursued different policy approaches, introducing carbon pricing mechanisms that affect energy-intensive industries. The federal carbon tax reached $65 per ton of carbon dioxide emissions, encouraging businesses to adopt cleaner technologies while generating government revenue for green initiatives. Child care subsidies expanded nationwide, supporting workforce participation by reducing family expenses. However, these policies created compliance costs for businesses that some economists argue slow economic growth compared to Australia's more business-friendly approach. Trade relationships shape economic fortunes for both nations in different ways. Australia benefits from proximity to rapidly growing Asian economies, with China remaining its largest trading partner despite recent diplomatic tensions. Japan, South Korea, and India provide diversified export markets for Australian commodities and agricultural products. The Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement creates preferential access to Pacific Rim markets, boosting trade volumes across multiple sectors. Canada maintains strong economic ties with the United States through the USMCA agreement, but this relationship creates both opportunities and dependencies. American markets absorb 75% of Canadian exports, creating vulnerability to U.S. economic downturns or policy changes. European Union trade agreements expand market access for Canadian products, while growing relationships with Asian countries diversify export destinations. However, geographic distance from major Asian markets creates transportation cost disadvantages compared to Australia's strategic Pacific location. Innovation rankings tell an interesting story about future economic potential. Canada ranks 14th globally in innovation indices, outperforming Australia's 23rd place ranking. Canadian universities produce high-quality research in artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and clean energy technologies. Government funding supports research and development through tax credits and direct grants to innovative companies. Toronto's financial technology sector attracts international investment, while Montreal's aerospace industry remains globally competitive. Australia struggles with innovation metrics despite strong economic performance. The country invests less in research and development as a percentage of GDP compared to other developed nations. Brain drain affects high-skilled sectors as talented Australians migrate to Silicon Valley and other international technology hubs. However, mining technology innovations and agricultural biotechnology represent areas where Australia maintains global leadership positions. Technology sector growth creates different economic dynamics in each country. Canada's technology companies generated $117 billion in revenue during 2024, representing 5.2% of total GDP. Artificial intelligence research attracts global technology giants to establish Canadian operations, creating high-paying jobs and tax revenue. E-commerce platforms and digital marketing companies benefit from bilingual capabilities that serve both English and French-speaking markets. Australia's technology sector remains smaller relative to overall economic size, contributing 3.8% of GDP through domestic companies and international subsidiaries. Gaming development and financial technology show promise, while mining technology exports leverage the country's resource extraction expertise. However, limited domestic market size constrains technology company growth compared to Canada's larger population base. Economic productivity measurements reveal surprising statistics about efficiency and output. Australian workers generate higher economic output per hour worked compared to Canadian workers. This productivity advantage stems from capital-intensive mining operations and efficient service sector operations. Higher productivity supports wage growth and living standards improvements over time. Australia emerges as the clear winner in providing better economic opportunities for individuals. The combination of higher GDP per capita, lower unemployment rates, and superior worker productivity creates conditions for personal wealth accumulation and career advancement that Canada cannot match. But the economics of living reality check if you cannot afford to actually live in living indices reveal Canada's significant advantage over Australia. Canada scores 89.94 on the Global Cost of Living Index, while Australia reaches 95.58. This difference means goods and services cost approximately 6% less across Canada compared to Australia. The gap affects everything from restaurant meals to clothing purchases, creating cumulative savings that add up to thousands of dollars annually for typical households. Housing market data exposes the most shocking cost differences between these countries. The average home price in Australia hit $658,000 in 2024, compared to Canada's $517,000. That represents a $141,000 premium for Australian homeownership, equivalent to buying a luxury car or funding several years of university education. Australian first-time buyers face deposit requirements exceeding $131,000 for average properties, while Canadian buyers need roughly $103,000 for similar purchases. Rental markets tell equally concerning stories about housing affordability. Australian renters face additional challenges through competitive bidding processes where multiple applicants offer above-asking rents to secure properties. Canadian rental markets show more stability with regulated rent increase limits in most provinces. Salary-to-expense ratios reveal the true financial pressure facing residents in both countries. The average wage in Australia reached $67,924 in 2024. While Canada averaged $54,473. Despite Australia's higher wages, housing costs consume larger percentages of household income. Australian residents spend significantly more of their median income on mortgage payments compared to their Canadian counterparts. Recent inflation impacts created different challenges for each country's residents. Australia experienced inflation peaks of 8.4% in late 2022. But rates declined to 3.2% by late 2024. Food prices increased 12% over 2 years, while fuel costs jumped 18% before moderating. Canada faced similar inflation pressures, peaking at 8.1% before falling to 2.8%. Canadian food inflation reached 11% at its worst, while energy costs fluctuated dramatically based on global oil prices. Government responses to inflation varied significantly between the countries. Australia implemented targeted cost of living relief through electricity bill rebates worth $300 per household and increased childcare subsidies. The government avoided broad stimulus measures that might worsen inflation. Canada chose different approaches, including temporary GST holidays on essential items and direct payments to lower-income families. Provincial governments added their own relief measures, creating patchwork programs across different regions. Transportation costs create substantial budget impacts in both countries. Australian fuel prices average $1.65 per litre, compared to Canada's $1.45. Vehicle registration fees range from $200 to $800 Australian dollars annually depending on state, while Canadian provinces charge $75 to $400. Public transportation monthly passes cost $150 Australian dollars in Sydney and Melbourne, compared to $156 Canadian dollars in Toronto and $104 in Vancouver. Food expenses beyond basic groceries show interesting patterns. Restaurant meals in Australia cost 25% more than Canadian equivalents on average. A mid-range dinner for two costs $85 Australian dollars compared to $68 Canadian dollars. Coffee culture creates daily expenses, with Australian cafe prices averaging $4.50 per cup versus Canada's $3.20. These differences accumulate rapidly for people who frequently dine out or grab coffee. Tax systems create significant impacts on take-home income for residents. Canada ranks 24th globally for most expensive living costs, while Australia sits at 16th place. These rankings reflect the cumulative impact of taxation, housing costs, and general price levels on residents' purchasing power. High-income earners face different tax burdens in each country, affecting disposable income available for living expenses. Provincial and state tax variations create different outcomes within each country. Alberta residents pay no provincial sales tax, while Ontario combines 13% HST on most purchases. British Columbia adds 12% tax, and Quebec reaches 14.975% combined rates. Australian states maintain more uniform GST rates at 10%, but stamp duties on property purchases vary dramatically between states. Purchasing power statistics reveal surprising insights about real wealth differences. The average household net adjusted disposable income per capita in Australia reaches $37,433 annually, exceeding the OECD average of $30,490. This higher disposable income partially offsets Australia's elevated living costs, providing better purchasing power than raw cost. Comparisons suggest healthcare costs create different financial pressures despite both countries offering universal systems. Australians pay Medicare levies of 2% on taxable income, while Canadians fund healthcare through general taxation. Private health insurance costs 150 Australian dollars monthly for individuals, compared to supplementary Canadian coverage at $85. Prescription medications cost more in Australia due to higher pharmaceutical pricing, while Canadian programs provide better drug cost coverage. Education expenses show substantial differences between countries. Australian university tuition averages $25,000 annually for domestic students, while Canadian universities charge $6,500 for in-province students. International student fees reach 35,000 Australian dollars compared to 28,000 Canadian dollars. These differences create long-term financial impacts for families planning children's education. Childcare costs represent major household expenses in both countries. Australian families pay $95 daily for childcare services, while Canadian families spend $52. Government subsidies reduce these costs, but Australian families still face higher out-of-pocket expenses. After-school care and vacation programs add thousands of dollars to annual family budgets. Canada emerges as the clear winner for cost of living value, offering significantly better affordability across housing, food, transportation, and most services. While Australian wages remain higher, the cost advantages in Canada create superior purchasing power and financial flexibility for most residents. But financial advantages mean little without the educational systems that prepare citizens to take advantage of economic opportunities. Education excellence examined. Which country creates better prepared citizens for the challenges of tomorrow? The 2025 education performance data reveals fascinating insights about how these two nations approach learning and skill development. Australia ranks 16th globally in education system performance according to the latest World Education Rankings, while Canada sits at 12th place. These rankings consider factors like student achievement, graduation rates, and international test scores across primary and secondary education levels. Canada's higher ranking reflects consistent performance across provinces, while Australia shows greater variation between states in educational outcomes. The Programme for International Student Assessment results from 2024 show Canadian students outperforming their Australian counterparts in mathematics and science. Canadian 15-year-olds scored just under 512 points in mathematics, while Australia scored under 490 points. This places Canada significantly higher in global rankings and demonstrates stronger foundational skills in critical subjects that drive technological innovation and economic competitiveness. Educational philosophies differ significantly between these countries. Canada emphasizes standardized curricula across provinces with consistent learning objectives from kindergarten through grade 12. The system focuses on collaborative learning approaches and inquiry-based education methods. Provincial education ministries coordinate closely to maintain national standards while allowing regional customization for local needs. Australia operates through a more decentralized approach, with each state managing its own education system. The Australian curriculum provides national guidelines, but states implement different assessment methods and graduation requirements. This creates variation in educational quality depending on location, but also allows innovation and experimentation with teaching methodologies. University systems reveal dramatic cost differences that affect accessibility and international competitiveness. Australian domestic students pay average annual tuition fees of $25,000 for undergraduate programs, while Canadian students studying in their home province pay approximately $6,500. International students face even larger disparities, with Australian universities charging $35,000 annually compared to Canadian institutions at $28,000. These cost differences significantly impact enrollment patterns and student debt levels. Australian graduates leave university with average debt loads of $23,000, while Canadian graduates typically owe $28,000 despite lower tuition fees. The difference stems from living costs and part-time work availability during studies. Australian students benefit from higher minimum wages that help offset education expenses. International student attraction tells an interesting story about global education reputation. Australia welcomed 625,000 international students in 2024, representing 28% of total university enrollment. Canada attracted 388,000 international students, comprising 22% of university populations. Australia's warmer climate and proximity to Asian markets create advantages for attracting students from populous countries like China, India, and Indonesia. Digital learning adoption accelerated dramatically following pandemic-driven changes in both countries. Australian schools invested $1.8 billion in technology infrastructure during 2024, providing tablets or laptops to 89% of students in grades 3 to 12. High-speed internet reached 94% of schools, enabling virtual reality learning experiences and online collaboration projects. Canadian schools emphasized digital literacy integration across all subjects rather than focusing solely on technology access. Provincial governments coordinated to ensure consistent digital skills development from elementary through secondary levels. Teacher professional development programs trained educators to incorporate technology meaningfully rather than simply replacing traditional methods with digital alternatives. Research output from universities demonstrates varying strengths in academic achievement and innovation. Canadian universities published 89,000 peer-reviewed research papers in 2024, while Australian institutions produced 76,000 publications. When adjusted for population size, Canada generates 2.2 research papers per 1,000 citizens compared to Australia's 2.8 papers per 1,000 residents, showing Australia's higher research productivity per capita. Citation impact reveals research quality differences between the countries. Australian research papers receive an average of 1.34 citations per paper, while Canadian research achieves 1.28 citations per paper. These metrics indicate international recognition and influence of academic work produced by each country's universities and research institutions. University rankings show mixed results for both countries. Canada's top institution, the University of Toronto, ranks 25th globally, while Australia's leading university, Australian National University, sits at 27th place. Both countries maintain strong international reputations for higher education quality and research excellence. Both countries invest substantially in education, with each dedicating approximately 5.3% of GDP to educational expenditure. This similar investment level reflects shared priorities in developing human capital and maintaining competitive educational systems that serve growing populations effectively. School life expectancy measurements reveal fundamental differences in educational access and duration. Canada ties for 7th place globally with 17 years of expected schooling per child, while Australia leads the world at 23 years. This 6-year difference represents significantly more educational opportunities for Australian students throughout their academic careers. Teacher quality metrics show different strengths in educator preparation and professional development. Canadian teachers complete more rigorous certification requirements, including classroom observation periods and mentorship programs lasting 2 full academic years. Australian teacher training emphasizes subject matter expertise with shorter practical experience requirements before full certification. Student achievement beyond standardized testing reveals interesting patterns in skill development and real-world preparation. Canadian students demonstrate stronger collaborative problem-solving abilities, while Australian students excel in individual critical thinking assessments. These differences reflect distinct pedagogical approaches that prepare students for different types of future challenges. Australia emerges as the winner in education excellence, offering superior learning opportunities through longer educational pathways, stronger research output per capita, and better international student attraction. The combination of extended school life expectancy and research productivity creates educational advantages that prepare Australian citizens more effectively for future economic and social challenges. But education systems mean nothing if citizens cannot access quality healthcare when they need it most. Medical emergencies test every nation's commitment to protecting its people's well-being. Healthcare systems head-to-head. Both countries deliver healthcare through universal systems, but their approaches create dramatically different patient experiences. The 2025 healthcare system rankings reveal fascinating performance differences between these universal healthcare giants. Australia's healthcare system ranks 7th globally according to the World Health Organization's latest comprehensive assessment, while Canada sits at 14th place. These rankings consider factors including system responsiveness, health outcomes, financial protection, and overall population health indicators. Australia's higher ranking reflects faster emergency response times, shorter specialist wait periods, and more comprehensive coverage for preventive services. Healthcare accessibility creates different experiences for residents seeking medical attention. Australia operates a mixed public-private system where Medicare provides universal coverage, while private insurance offers additional options and faster access to elective procedures. Patients can choose between public hospital treatment at no cost or private hospital care with shorter wait times. The system encourages private insurance through tax incentives, creating multiple pathways for medical care access. Canada's single-payer system eliminates private insurance for medically necessary services, ensuring equal access regardless of financial status. Provincial health insurance plans cover physician visits, hospital stays, and essential medical procedures without direct costs to patients. However, the system excludes prescription drugs, dental care, and vision services from universal coverage, requiring separate insurance or personal payment for these services. Emergency department performance shows significant operational differences between healthcare systems. Australian emergency rooms average 2.8 hours from arrival to treatment for non-critical cases, while urgent cases receive immediate attention. Canadian emergency departments face greater capacity pressures, with average wait times reaching 4.6 hours for non-urgent cases. Critical patients receive immediate care in both countries, but semi-urgent conditions often require extended waiting periods in Canada. Treatment outcomes demonstrate varying success rates across different medical conditions and procedures. Australia achieves 94% 5-year survival rates for breast cancer, compared to Canada's 89% rate. Cardiac surgery outcomes show similar patterns, with Australian hospitals reporting 97% success rates for coronary bypass procedures versus Canada's 94%. These differences stem from equipment availability, surgical volume, and post-operative care protocols. Specialist consultation wait times create substantial impacts on patient experiences and health outcomes. Australian patients wait an average of 32 days for non-urgent specialist appointments, while urgent referrals receive attention within 3 days. Private insurance holders access specialists within 10 days for most conditions. Canada's specialist wait times average 78 days for non-urgent cases, with some specialties requiring 4 to 6 months for appointments. Urgent cases receive priority, but capacity constraints limit system responsiveness. Australia recently increased primary care funding to improve access and reduce wait times, while Canada expanded its healthcare workforce plan to address critical staffing shortages affecting hospitals and clinics nationwide. These reforms target the most pressing challenges facing each system, but reflect different priorities and approaches to healthcare delivery improvement. Mental health services show contrasting approaches to psychological wellness support. Australia provides Medicare-subsidized psychology consultations, allowing patients up to 20 sessions annually with qualified mental health professionals. The Better Access to Mental Health Care program covers treatment for depression, anxiety, and other common conditions. Crisis intervention services operate 24-hour helplines with trained counselors and emergency response capabilities. Canadian mental health services vary significantly between provinces, creating uneven access to psychological support. Some provinces cover limited psychology sessions through public insurance, while others require private payment or employer insurance coverage. Community mental health centers provide free services, but waiting lists often extend 2 to 3 months for initial appointments. Federal funding supports Indigenous mental health programs and suicide prevention initiatives. Preventive care approaches reveal different priorities in maintaining population health. Australia emphasizes cancer screening programs with free mammograms, cervical screening, and colorectal testing for eligible age groups. The National Immunization Program provides free vaccines for children and adults, including annual influenza shots for high-risk populations. Health assessments for seniors include comprehensive evaluations covered by Medicare. Canada's preventive care programs focus on chronic disease management and health promotion campaigns. Provincial screening programs offer mammograms, pap tests, and colonoscopies at recommended intervals. Vaccination schedules cover essential immunizations, but provinces determine specific programs and eligibility criteria. Some provinces provide enhanced preventive services, while others maintain basic coverage levels. Healthcare spending patterns demonstrate different resource allocation priorities. In 2023, Canada allocated approximately $169.33 billion, representing 18.64% of its total government budget to healthcare. Australia spent approximately $130.8 billion on healthcare, representing 20.22% of its budget. Per capita healthcare spending reaches $4,390 Canadian dollars annually compared to Australia's $4,590 per person. Resource density statistics reveal surprising infrastructure differences between the healthcare systems. Australia maintains 3.8 hospital beds per 1,000 inhabitants compared to Canada's 2.5 beds per 1,000 residents. These higher resource densities contribute to shorter wait times and improved access to medical care across Australia's healthcare network. Patient satisfaction surveys indicate different levels of healthcare system approval among residents. Australian patients report 78% satisfaction with their healthcare experiences, citing accessibility and quality of care as primary strengths. Concerns focus on private insurance costs and some specialist wait times. Canadian patients show 71% satisfaction levels, with universal coverage receiving praise but wait times generating frustration. Health outcome statistics reveal which system produces better results for citizens. Australia's infant mortality rate reaches 3.1 deaths per 1,000 live births compared to Canada's 4.5 per 1,000. Preventable mortality rates show Australia achieving 73 deaths per 100,000 people, while Canada records 89 per 100,000. These outcome differences reflect system efficiency, resource availability, and care coordination effectiveness. Australia emerges as the superior healthcare system provider, offering faster access to care, better treatment outcomes, higher resource density, and greater patient satisfaction. The combination of universal coverage with private options creates flexibility, while maintaining comprehensive care access that keeps Australians healthier throughout their lives. But even the best healthcare systems face mounting challenges when nature itself becomes the enemy. Climate and environment showdown. Both nations face environmental challenges that test their commitment to sustainable futures and climate action. The 2025 Environmental Performance Index rankings reveal a surprising gap between these two nations. Canada ranks 25th globally with a score of 62.8, while Australia sits at 39th place with 55.4 points. This 18-position difference reflects Canada's stronger performance in climate policy implementation, air quality management, and biodiversity protection. Australia scores poorly in greenhouse gas emissions growth and environmental health metrics, while Canada benefits from vast forest coverage and cleaner energy transitions. Climate change affects both countries in dramatically different ways that reshape their environmental futures. Australia faces intensifying drought conditions across interior regions, with the Murray-Darling Basin recording its driest period in 120 years of measurements. Canada confronts thawing permafrost across northern territories, with Arctic zones warming by 3 degrees Celsius above historical averages, releasing stored carbon and destabilizing building foundations. The Northwest Passage opens for shipping during summer months, creating new environmental pressures from increased maritime traffic. Renewable energy adoption reveals starkly different progress toward clean energy transitions. Australia reached approximately 28% renewable electricity generation, but deployment rates slowed significantly from previous years. The absence of legislated renewable energy targets, combined with grid infrastructure challenges, creates barriers to faster adoption. Administrative delays and regulatory uncertainty discourage investment in large-scale solar and wind projects. Canada achieved roughly 70% renewable electricity generation, maintaining its position as a global leader in clean energy production. Hydroelectric power provides the foundation for this advantage, while wind and solar installations expand rapidly across provinces. Environmental policy approaches demonstrate completely different strategies for addressing climate challenges. Australia's government supports new offshore gas field developments and approves additional coal mining projects despite stated climate commitments. The country permits hydraulic fracturing operations and creates regulations for carbon sequestration projects in other nations rather than reducing domestic emissions. These policies contradict Australia's international climate pledges and slow progress toward emission reduction targets. Canada implements comprehensive climate policy agendas that produce measurable emission reductions. The government adopted oil and gas emissions cap regulations that limit industry carbon output. Federal carbon pricing mechanisms reach $65 per ton of carbon dioxide emissions, encouraging businesses to adopt cleaner technologies. Provincial governments coordinate climate adaptation strategies while maintaining economic competitiveness through green technology investments. Recent natural disasters highlight the increasing environmental risks facing both countries. Australia experienced massive bushfires that burned 18.6 million hectares, followed by flooding that affected 2.3 million people across Queensland and New South Wales. These disasters cost the economy over $23 billion in damages and recovery expenses. Canada faced extreme weather events, including the British Columbia heatwave that killed over 600 people, and flooding that submerged entire communities in the Fraser Valley. The economic impact of these disasters exceeded $17 billion, not including long-term health and infrastructure costs. Air quality measurements reveal surprising differences in environmental health outcomes. Canada maintains better air quality indexes across major urban centers, with Toronto and Vancouver recording PM 2.5 levels below World Health Organization guidelines. Industrial emissions regulations and vehicle emission standards keep pollution levels manageable despite growing urban populations. Australia struggles with air quality issues in major cities, particularly during bushfire seasons when smoke plumes blanket metropolitan areas for weeks. Sydney and Melbourne exceed WHO air quality guidelines during summer months, creating public health warnings for vulnerable populations. Water resource management presents critical sustainability challenges for both nations. Australia's water security depends on rainfall patterns that become increasingly unpredictable due to climate change. The Great Artesian Basin faces depletion pressures from agricultural and mining activities, while surface water availability decreases across major river systems. Canada possesses 20% of global freshwater reserves, creating long-term water security advantages. The Great Lakes system provides renewable water resources for millions of residents, while northern territories contain vast untapped freshwater supplies. Biodiversity protection efforts show different priorities and success rates. Australia's unique ecosystems face extinction pressures from invasive species, habitat destruction, and climate change. The country lost 30% of koala populations over the past decade, while Great Barrier Reef coral coverage declined by 50% since 1995. Canada's biodiversity conservation benefits from vast wilderness areas that remain largely intact. Boreal forests cover 35% of the country, providing habitat for countless species and carbon sequestration services. Protected areas encompass 12% of total land area, exceeding international conservation targets. Carbon emissions trajectories reveal which country progresses toward climate goals more effectively. Australia's emissions increased in recent years, driven by transportation sector growth and continued fossil fuel dependence. The country ranks among the highest per capita carbon emitters globally. Canada's emissions decreased 2.1% in 2024, continuing a downward trend that began in 2019. The country committed to 40 to 45% emission reductions by 2030 compared to 2005 levels, with current policies putting it on track to achieve these targets. Canada invests heavily in climate adaptation and renewable energy targets through coordinated federal-provincial approaches that create consistent climate policies across jurisdictions. Australia's fossil fuel approvals and development projects undermine its stated climate commitments, creating policy contradictions that slow environmental progress. Canada emerges as the clear winner in environmental preparedness and sustainability, offering better climate policies, cleaner air quality, superior water resources, and more effective emission reduction strategies that position it for long-term environmental success. But environmental policies mean nothing if countries cannot attract and retain the human talent needed to build
immigration,
prosperous
opportunity
in
magnet.
an increasingly competitive
Both
global
nations
landscape. Compete fiercely for the world's most talented individuals, offering dramatically different pathways and promises to potential immigrants. Every single day, these countries process hundreds of applications from people making life-changing decisions to call these nations home permanently. The 2025 immigration statistics reveal fascinating shifts in global movement patterns. Canada welcomed 485,000 new permanent residents in 2024, maintaining its position as one of the world's most immigrant-friendly destinations. Australia processed 401,000 permanent residence applications during the same period, representing significant growth in newcomer intake. These numbers translate into massive demographic changes that reshape everything from housing markets to cultural landscapes in both countries. Immigration composition tells different stories about what each country prioritizes in newcomer selection. Australia allocates approximately 60% of its permanent residence spots to skilled workers through economic pathways, 25% to family reunification cases, and 15% to humanitarian refugees. Canada distributes its immigration quota with 58% going to economic migrants, 27% for family class immigration, and 15% for protected persons and refugees. Recent policy transformations create dramatically different pathways for potential immigrants. Australia introduced the Core Skills Occupation List in 2025, streamlining entry processes for professionals in high-demand fields like healthcare, engineering, and information technology. The new Skills in Demand visa replaced the previous temporary skill shortage visa, creating faster pathways for critical sector workers. These changes aim to fill labor shortages more efficiently while promoting regional development outside major metropolitan areas. Canada continues operating through its express entry system, but implemented occupation-targeted draws that prioritize specific professions experiencing severe shortages. Healthcare workers, construction specialists, engineers, and technology professionals receive invitations to apply for permanent residence faster than candidates in other fields. The country also tightened family reunification requirements, introducing new eligibility criteria for relatives of temporary foreign workers and international students. Immigration pathway requirements reveal significant differences in accessibility and processing times. Australia's skilled migration system uses a points-based assessment considering age, English proficiency, education qualifications, and work experience. Processing times average 8 to 12 months for complete applications, depending on the specific visa category and country of origin. Canada's express entry system typically processes applications within 6 months once they receive approval, making Canada faster for permanent residence processing. Integration support systems demonstrate varying commitments to helping newcomers succeed in their adopted countries. Australia provides settlement services for recently arrived immigrants, including English language training, employment assistance, and community orientation programs. The Adult Migrant English program offers up to 510 hours of free English instruction for eligible immigrants. However, these services concentrate primarily in major cities, leaving regional immigrants with limited support options. Canada operates settlement program funding that delivers comprehensive newcomer services across urban and rural communities. Language instruction for newcomers to Canada provides free English and French classes regardless of location. Employment bridging programs help internationally trained professionals obtain Canadian credentials and work experience. Community Connections initiatives match new immigrants with established residents for mentorship and social integration. Job prospects for immigrants vary significantly based on credential recognition and professional licensing requirements. Australia recognizes international qualifications through skills assessment organizations, but many professions require additional examinations or supervised practice periods. Medical professionals, engineers, and teachers face lengthy credentialing processes that can delay career advancement for months or years. Regional areas offer faster employment opportunities, but fewer specialized positions. Canada struggles with credential recognition challenges that underemploy skilled immigrants in their trained professions. The phenomenon of immigrant taxi drivers holding advanced degrees has become commonplace in major cities. However, recent reforms expedite professional licensing for healthcare workers, while provincial governments coordinate to reduce interprovincial barriers affecting immigrant professionals who want to relocate within Canada. Career advancement opportunities reveal different long-term prospects for immigrant success. Australia's economy creates strong demand for skilled workers in mining, construction, healthcare, and technology sectors. Regional migration incentives offer higher points for settlement outside major cities, providing pathways to permanent residence that urban applicants cannot access. Business investment visas enable wealthy immigrants to establish enterprises while obtaining residency rights. Canada's larger domestic market creates more diverse career opportunities across multiple industries and regions. The country's bilingual character offers advantages for immigrants with French language skills, particularly in Quebec, where provincial immigration programs provide faster processing times. Startup visa programs attract international entrepreneurs, while family reunification policies help immigrants build support networks that facilitate career development. Multicultural policies shape how successfully immigrants integrate into broader society. Canada's official multiculturalism policy provides constitutional protection for cultural diversity and government funding for ethnic community organizations. The country recognizes Indigenous peoples' rights while celebrating immigrant contributions to national identity. Australia emphasizes civic integration and English proficiency as primary markers of successful settlement, promoting cultural festivals while expecting newcomers to adopt Australian values and legal frameworks. Recent policy changes significantly affect immigration flows and settlement patterns. Australia's regional migration initiatives offer additional points and faster processing for candidates willing to live outside Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. Canada announced immigration level targets that gradually increase annual intake to 500,000 new permanent residents by 2027, while simultaneously tightening temporary foreign worker programs to manage infrastructure pressures. Immigration success statistics reveal surprising outcomes about long-term immigrant achievements. According to available data, 29.99% of Australia's total population consists of immigrants, compared to Canada's 21.17% immigrant population. Despite Canada's reputation as an immigration destination, Australia actually hosts a higher percentage of foreign-born residents within its overall population. Canada emerges as the superior destination for immigrants seeking comprehensive support, faster processing times, better integration services, and more diverse settlement options. The combination of efficient permanent residence pathways, extensive newcomer support programs, and constitutional protection for multiculturalism creates conditions where immigrants can truly build successful new lives. But immigration policies and economic opportunities mean nothing if the daily reality of living in these countries fails to deliver genuine satisfaction and happiness for residents who call them home. Quality of Life Ultimate Test. The 2025 Quality of Life Index by Numbeo delivers a shocking verdict that challenges assumptions about these comparable nations. Australia claims the top global position with a score of 79, while Canada ranks 19th with a score of 72.2. This dramatic gap reflects comprehensive measurements including purchasing power, safety levels, healthcare access, living costs, property affordability, commute efficiency, pollution exposure, and climate conditions. Australia's #1 ranking places it ahead of traditionally high-performing countries like Switzerland and Denmark, indicating that the land down under creates optimal conditions for human flourishing. Lifestyle factors create the foundation for quality of life differences that residents experience daily. Australia's year-round outdoor accessibility promotes physical activity and social connection through beach culture, hiking opportunities, and outdoor dining that continues through winter months. Canada's lifestyle revolves around seasonal adaptation and indoor community building during harsh winter months, with hockey rinks, community centres, and cultural venues becoming social hubs where residents maintain connections despite challenging weather conditions. Work-life balance statistics reveal significant differences in employment satisfaction and personal time availability. Australian workers average 38.5 hours weekly in full-time positions, while Canadian employees work 39.2 hours weekly on average. Australia's 4-week minimum annual leave requirement exceeds most developed nations, while Canada provides more generous parental leave policies. Both countries offer flexible scheduling arrangements in approximately 2/3 of professional roles. Social services create dramatically different support systems that affect daily life security and stress levels. Australia's universal healthcare through Medicare covers medical consultations and procedures without direct costs, while subsidized prescription medications reduce financial health burdens. Childcare subsidies help working families manage costs, though availability remains limited in some areas. Canada's comprehensive social safety net includes universal healthcare coverage plus additional provincial programs for prescription drugs and dental care in some regions. Child tax benefits provide monthly payments to eligible families, reducing child poverty rates below Australian levels. Community satisfaction measurements reflect how connected and supported residents feel within their neighbourhoods and cities. Australian cities consistently rank high in livability surveys, with Melbourne and Sydney featuring excellent public spaces, cultural amenities, and recreational facilities. Community groups and sports clubs create social networks that support immigrant integration and long-term resident engagement. Canadian communities demonstrate strong social solidarity through volunteer networks and mutual support systems developed through harsh weather challenges. Neighbourhood associations and community organisations provide social services and advocacy that complement government programs. Recent social developments and policy changes reshape quality of life conditions in both countries. Australia implemented mental health reforms in 2024 that expanded psychological support services and reduced stigma around seeking help. Housing affordability initiatives provide first home buyer assistance, though demand continues outpacing supply in major cities. Canada's National Childcare Program began rolling out across provinces in 2025, reducing family costs to $10 daily for regulated childcare services. Pharmacare expansion provides universal prescription drug coverage for essential medications. Safety statistics reveal important differences in personal security that influence daily life confidence and freedom. Australia records 0.89 homicides per 100,000 inhabitants annually, while Canada reports 2.05 homicides per 100,000 residents. Property crime rates show Australia at 1,993 incidents per 100,000 people, compared to Canada's 2,598 per 100,000. These differences create measurable impacts on personal safety perceptions and behavioral choices. Infrastructure quality affects daily convenience and life satisfaction through transportation efficiency and service reliability. Australian cities invest heavily in public transport systems, with Melbourne's tram network and Sydney's rail system providing comprehensive coverage. Road infrastructure remains well maintained, though traffic congestion affects major cities during peak periods. Canadian infrastructure faces unique challenges from climate extremes that damage roads, bridges, and utilities regularly. Public transit systems serve major cities effectively, but rural areas rely heavily on personal vehicles for mobility. recreational opportunities demonstrate different lifestyle possibilities that contribute to personal fulfillment and happiness. Australia's beaches, national parks, and outdoor recreation areas remain accessible year-round for most residents. Professional sports leagues and amateur competitions provide entertainment and participation opportunities. Canada's recreational landscape centres around seasonal activities that maximize outdoor opportunities during favorable weather periods. Winter sports facilities and summer camping areas provide escape opportunities from urban environments. Social mobility and equality measures reveal which country provides better opportunities for personal advancement and fair treatment. Australia demonstrates stronger income mobility, with children from low-income families achieving higher education and career success rates. However, wealth inequality remains significant, particularly affecting Indigenous populations and recent immigrants. Canada shows more consistent equality outcomes across different demographic groups, though regional variations create different opportunities depending on location. Mental health support systems create different frameworks for psychological well-being and crisis intervention. Australia's Medicare-subsidised psychology consultations allow patients up to 20 sessions annually with qualified mental health professionals. Crisis intervention services operate 24-hour helplines with trained counsellors and emergency response capabilities. Canadian mental health services vary significantly between provinces, creating uneven access to psychological support. Some provinces cover limited psychology sessions through public insurance, while others require private payment or employer insurance coverage. Australia emerges as the definitive winner in providing superior quality of life through better safety conditions, optimal climate for year-round outdoor activities, stronger economic opportunities, and higher life satisfaction rankings that create the foundation for human flourishing and personal fulfillment. The comprehensive data across multiple quality of life measurements consistently favors Australia's approach to creating conditions where residents can build satisfying, secure, and prosperous lives. These results provide the final piece of evidence needed to determine which country truly offers the better future for its citizens. After analyzing every category from population growth to quality of life rankings, the data reveals distinct national advantages. In 2025, Australia leads in GDP per capita, life expectancy, healthcare access, and quality of life rankings, while Canada excels in environmental policy, immigration processing, and multicultural integration. Australia's combination of economic opportunity, superior healthcare outcomes, and optimal living conditions creates compelling advantages for residents seeking prosperity and well-being. These comparisons reveal how national priorities shape citizen experiences. Countries focusing on balanced growth, healthcare investment, and quality infrastructure create happier populations. Which factors do you value most when choosing a country? Climate advantages, economic opportunities, or healthcare quality? Drop a comment below and let us know what matters most in your decision-making process.